Welcome to Listen In. I'm Brian Gahan, and this podcast focuses on the stories that are buried deep inside all conversations. Be it the kind of conversation you have with someone whose life experience is full of interesting POVs and insights, or the kind of conversation you have inside your own head around your own life experiences. Today, in episode 6, I'm talking with Michelle Pillar, a modern-day astrologer and an angelic Reiki master. Michelle has dedicated her life's journey to helping others understand and navigate their very own. She explores using astrology as a tool for self-growth and enlightenment, consciousness, and the mass awakening happening around the world, and her unique approach to helping others through being a wayshower during unpredictable times. So hi, Michelle. Welcome to Listen In.
Thanks, Brian. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. I wanted to dive deep into your background around astrology and learn how that came into your life.
I suppose astrology has always been a part of my life, even from a young age, though I wouldn't have called it astrology when I was a child. But I've always been deeply fascinated by the stars and felt a heartful connection to the stars. I used to gaze at them in my childhood and have an irrational sense of homesickness. So there's always been something of the stars in me. And it began, some cohesion, shall we say, developed when my mom introduced me to the idea that I was born a Pisces, and all of this sort of new information really resonated with me even as a child, and I wanted to read the newspaper horoscopes, and I wanted to know more about it, and that didn't develop formally until my adult years, when I had a couple of summers with really nothing to do but study astrology.
Once you started to learn about astrology, do you have a moment where there was like an aha or, oh, this is making sense to me?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And that was in the early 2000s. I had lots of available time to start pulling out some books on my shelves that I'd collected over the years. And they were all astrology texts that I had never actually read. And one summer, as I generated my own birth chart, there are all kinds of free sites on the net where you can generate your own birth chart. I began to apply what I was reading to my chart, and that generated all kinds of light bulb moments for me, where I realized that the depth of astrology was profound, and that it was actually far more interesting to use astrology as a tool for self-growth and enlightenment, and far more fascinating in that vein than it is as a predictive tool, which most people think of astrology as.
Exactly. That's we call that the sun sign astrology, which you find in your local newspaper, or you find now on the internet, where it's telling, all Pisces or all Cancers or all Sagittarius the same thing.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, Brian. I love that. I love that there are so many sun sign columns available in print and online, because for many people that is their introduction to astrology. And it's nice. Hey, at least there's an introduction and an entry point for people into astrology.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid point, because, if it was, rocket science or brain surgery or something a little bit more scientific driven, you wouldn't necessarily have these sort of low level entry levels for people to step in and get,
right.
Get an idea that there's more out there to learn. It reminds me of a funny story. I mean, you probably remember the Omega Center that was in Toronto.
Very well.
Yeah, I used to go there, when I had free time, and I would, because they were very generous with allowing you to read books while you stood at the shelf pretending you were about to buy a book. And so any astrology book that, if the section wasn't too many pages long, I could take a piece of my birth chart in my brain with me and read about that aspect, and then go home and have lots of time to sort of integrate that into my thinking, and see how it affected my personal growth. And I found that so liberating to be able to have access to sound bites of astrology, or bits and pieces of astrology over periods of time.
Mm, yes. I think that's, by the way, that's a key point that you've just said there, over a period of time. It can take a long time to integrate what you're learning about yourself, um, to really be able to take that knowledge in and to look at it head on, and then to wrestle with it, agree with it, disagree with it. This is who I am. No, it's not. Yes, no, maybe. Okay. And then to decide what you want to do with that information. If this is my pattern, do I like this, or do I want to change it? And those kinds of awakenings need time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you had to fast forward to today and tell me, how do you describe yourself, or what would you say you do? Um, People always love this question, so I'm going to just leave it at that. How do you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as a wayshower who uses ancient tools in modern ways.
Wow, that's a very, very good description. I'm
Well,
not.
it invites further questioning. Now, some people will say, "What is a wayshower?" And that's fair. Um, but for people that can appreciate what that is, it's a succinct description.
Mm-hmm. So maybe explain to our listeners, what is a shoulder, a way shower.
And a way shoulder, because sometimes you are a shoulder for someone else. A way shower is what it sounds like. Someone who will show the way. The way to what? Well, where do you want to go? Let me help. Let me help show you the way.
And so then you're talking about using ancient tools. Maybe you can describe that.
Yes. So my primary tool that I feel most comfortable using is astrology, because I have devoted years of study to it and years of practice. Um, there are other tools that I use as well. Oracle cards are they're visually beautiful, and they help you tell a story to the person that you're speaking with about themselves. Uh, crystals. Crystals are, um, I think of them as frozen light. Frozen energy. They to me, when I look at beautiful crystals, I feel sometimes as though I'm looking at a Hubble space shot, something from NASA. If you look at the interior of a crystal, like agate, for instance, it can honestly astonish you. It's like looking at a nebula of stars. So crystals I use because they help you direct energy and amplify energy. And Angelic Reiki is a form of non-invasive energy healing. So those are the tools that I'm using.
So Angelic Reiki, maybe describe that a little bit.
Okay, you've heard of Reiki?
Yes.
Yes, so there are all kinds of systems of Reiki. Most Reiki practitioners today would probably call themselves Usui Reiki practitioners, and that's the original type of Reiki. Reiki has evolved like many things, and it changes as the times change. And I became a master of the Angelic Reiki form, which is invoking angelic presence, and certainly specifically invoking the presence of Archangel Metatron. And light healing, light is intelligent, it is infused, it is consciousness, and it knows where it needs to go in a person's body for healing to occur. Light is a form of intelligence, right?
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Yeah, this is where we're probably, this is really, we get esoteric now.
Yeah, which is great. So, and also you mentioned Archangel Metatron. Was that the correct?
Archangel Metatron, yes.
So maybe explain a bit more about that as well.
Okay, Metatron is one of the archangels and is often, Metatron relates and resonates with new forms of light technology, forms of technology that are used in service of healing and enlightenment. We're not used to thinking in terms of light as a technology, but light, and I'm when I say that word, I almost say it with that capital L. It's a force of intelligence. It is the thing that keeps us all alive. Our light comes from our central star, which we call the sun, and light is encoded. It is encoded with information. It's encoded with elements for that sustain us. We use light as a metaphor. We talk about enlightenment, where we have always associated light with higher knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and greater awareness. So we are coming to a point now in our collective evolution where we are discovering ways of using light that are more than just flipping on the light switch and being able to see what you're doing in the dark. We're taking that metaphor and we're using it to turn within, turning the light bulb on within to see what's really going on inside, what we can afford to let go of and what we can afford to shift.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you see a connection that's happening sort of in what we would say, like, for lack of a better term, the real world, where we're seeing, light being used in unique new ways that is also a reflection of the metaphysical side of your understanding of where light is going and what we need to do with it?
Some of it I wouldn't care to speak about yet, because I'm not, for instance, a medical professional, but I know that there are new ways that are being utilized in medicine, for instance. It's similarly with sound. We're using sound in new ways now and understanding that we can control and direct it and apply it for healing ways. So these are ancient ideas that are being used and applied in more modern ways now. And some of this stuff is so cutting edge that, neither you nor I are going to hear about it for a few years.
Right.
But there are pioneers out there that are saying, what else is possible?
Mm-hmm. So now that we've gone down that sort of that metaphysical wormhole, so to speak, I'm going to fast forward to something I read on your blog where you said, you're guiding people through wormholes and transitions is what I do. Or, sorry, guiding people through wormholes and transitions is what I do.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Fortunately, everyone will get to a point in their lives that feels like a crossroad. A choice must be made. Um, Unfortunately, in those moments, the choice can be agonizing. It can be, we always come to a life-changing moment, don't we, where we have to decide this or that. It can't be both at the same time. So what is it going to be? And sometimes people get themselves into a state of paralysis because they're trying to solve a problem. Perhaps they just need to reframe it. I'm at a new point in my life. I have some choices that I didn't have before, and that's a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that frees up a little bit of bandwidth inside. And then you can start to think about the choice. For me, you can't think your way out of everything. It cannot all be done in the head. You have to use other ways to make these crucial life choices. And I really genuinely enjoy helping people get out of their heads back into their bodies where sensation is directing them. In my experience, Brian, most people actually know what they want to do, and they know what they must do. They already know it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily have an abundance of courage in that moment to do what they know they must. But their bodies have been telling them for some time what they need to do. They just don't want to listen at the moment, and or they may need another person like myself to say, hey, you have permission. Give yourself permission to make that change.
Right. And so explain to me how you do that. Like when you say, you're giving them permission. So are you helping them validate their inner intuition?
Yes. In most cases, that's exactly what I hear. And it often is that word validate. When we go into a session, and I simply exchange for when I'm looking at astrology charts, really I am looking at what energies are presenting themselves and where there is great potential for someone to dive deeply into something and where there's not. Most times people can feel their potential. We have new awakenings. We have desires. Those are good things. Those are signposts. They are telling us, hey, I'm ready for a change, or I'm ready for this new thing. And then they go into their heads with the, yeah, but how will this impact my this, my that, my family, my job, my relationship, my whatever, right? We put up
Mm-hmm.
the yeah buts, the roadblocks. And that becomes a mental game in frustration. So when I am sharing with a person what I'm seeing astrologically and where the potentials are, they tend to feel seen. Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, I feel seen. I feel validated. Or I thought so, but I just didn't know if that was my imagination. You sometimes require another set of eyes and ears just to say, you are barking up the right tree. Have the courage.
Mm-hmm. And the ability to validate somebody's intuition, and I'm kind of going into the sort of intimate level here of, is that because you're coming with these ancient sacred tools, or you're coming with this knowledge of light as an intelligence, that people then intuitively trust you back?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Like, why do I believe you? Like, why, just because you're saying, yes, your gut is right, you should, take that leap of faith, or take that path, or go left or right or whatever. Like, what is it that allows people to trust you? Have you ever thought of that?
That's a beautiful question. For me, our trust is developed in the initial exchanges that we have, whether in conversation on the phone or through email, when I am understanding why someone has reached out to me. If there is a specific issue, I invite them to share that with me so that when I prepare for our full session, I can keep an eye out on this issue and how it is presenting itself, what I'm seeing in their astrology charts. So some of that trust is already engendered before we meet. And I think that's really important because people share very personal, intimate aspects of their lives with me. And they must know that I hold that as sacred, that it's private, that it never gets shared, and that the space that we're in is really entirely safe.
Mm-hmm.
When we're actually in the session, that is a very sacred space. Before I have opened the conversation up with the person with whom I'm speaking, I have done a meditation. I have made sure that my inner channel feels clear, that it's grounded. I always invoke, let me speak only truth and what is necessary for this person to hear. So I have my own guidelines around how to be in full integrity with myself and with another person. And I think that contributes to the trust. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is, Brian, is something is true. You know it when you hear it because your body floods you with a sensation that says, yes, 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 yes. Oh my goodness, yes. That feels right. Mm-hmm. Your body tells you.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Michelle from Mystic Maps, who is discussing the importance of learning to trust our bodies in order to disconnect from illusions and waking up to the new consciousness. And so your job is helping the person you're working with learn to trust their body.
Yes, trust your body. And if you are someone that grew up living in your head, let's get your head connected back to your body. Let's get all of your different bodies, because we have not just a physical body. Let's get all of your bodies integrated and connected so that each one of them is talking to the other and you feel in resonance with yourself.
So you say multiple bodies. Maybe describe what those are.
Okay, well, we're used to relating to our physical body. That's a really easy body. We see it, we feel it, it's real, it exists. There's your mental body. That's all the chatter. You know that exists because your brain, your mind is talking to you. So it's easy for people to accept that they have a mental body, a mental energy. It's etheric, it's invisible, but it exists. There's your emotional body. You know that you have emotions and feelings because you feel them. So again, that's not a big stretch for a person to say, okay, all right, I have an emotional body to go with my my mental body and my physical body. Now, there is also the spiritual body, otherwise called the light body. And that is the piece of you that will survive long after your physical body and your mental body and your emotional body. It's your, well, notice that we call it a light body. Mm-hmm. Again, we're bringing that word light back into the conversation. It is the essence of you that is eternal. It's the 0 point energy. It's the point to which you will return even when your mind stops communicating with you. You will always have this eternal essence of you, your light body.
Mm-hmm. And so when you're saying you're getting them to connect all of their bodies, is it predominantly the light body that you're reconnecting people with?
I'm connecting people, I hope, with all of their bodies. That's my intention, is first of all to make people aware that, uh, remind them you are more than just this body. You are more than your physical body. You have many layers within you. And just as there is more to you than you can see and hear, there is more to creation than you can see and hear. And so my intention is to ensure that people are even aware that they are vast, eternal, and unlimited, and they may need to reconnect a few things inside themselves. And it's really worth it to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And is that a pattern that you see happening in this day and age? Is there a growing need for that reconnection to happen?
Oh, yes, it's essential. There's an unstoppable movement around the globe now, and it's a force of mass awakening, awakening from a dream. Uh, there are people in huge numbers now talking about how this physical life that we live, this is the dream. The real life is not this dream. So, in other words, you, Brian, are having, we could take this idea and say, you are having a dream. Your eternal spark is having a dream, is dreaming itself as Brian. And my eternal spark is dreaming itself as Michelle right now. And yet, those are personalities. They will come and go. So people around the world are saying, connect me with what is real and eternal. Please disconnect me from my illusions. And so when you start to pull the plug on some of your favorite illusions, and we've all got them, you start to look outside yourself and see some of the illusions that are being perpetuated outside yourself. And you hopefully begin to question, is it real? Is that real? I just heard this story on the news today. Is that real?
Right.
Um, so you hear about people talking about taking the red pill. Did you ever see the movie The Matrix?
Yes, yes, yes. Where Neo has to choose between the red or the blue.
Yeah. And so now we have this terminology that we call, so and so just got red pilled, or I just got red pilled. Or, oh, please don't make me have to red pill you. Don't make me have to explain to you what really goes on, those kinds of things. But really, a lot of people are asking to be red pilled, so to speak. Wake me up from the illusion that this is, and show me what is actually the truth. I want to step out of this matrix and into something more freeing and holistic, is what a lot of people are saying.
Right. And so do you see a real world conflict with that? I mean, like, you go down that whole, what we see going on right now with the sort of state of the world, and how there seems to be a bit of a pushback to that, or a clinging on to the old.
Yes.
So
It's a, oh, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
no, no, that's fine. It's just, I just wanted to know, like, how is that dynamic? How do you explain that dynamic?
There's, as more and more truth with a capital T becomes available to us around who we truly are and what this life on our planet is about, the more it is going to bring up issues of fear for people that aren't ready to know, or are concerned that if they know more about what reality is, that it will force upon their lives a change that they're not ready for. I have respect and compassion for that. And that's why we have free will. You have your free will to go and research yourself and find out as much as you can about the times that we're living in, if that fascinates you. Now, for some people, that is of zero interest. They have no stakes in seeing massive change occur on our planet, and they're okay with status quo. So they're not going to go down a rabbit hole trying to figure out what is really happening. The way that I see it is, what is happening is we are becoming aware en masse that consciousness permeates everything, and consciousness evolves itself, that nothing is static. So some of the principles that we may have been taught aren't actually true.
Do you have an example of that?
We have to sort of hold two things up together, Brian, that don't always mix together well. If we look at Newtonian physics, Isaac Newton, he was the one that brought to everyone's attention, hey, there's a thing here. It's called gravity. It works. Look what happens. It's a force. It's gravity. And it exists. Oddly enough, Newton, he simply proclaimed gravity as a thing that exists. He didn't actually explain its mechanism. So we have Newton's world of physics, which is pretty basic. Gravity is a thing, it exists. And we have atoms and electrons, and they spin and they create charges and things like that. Then we have to hold that up in one hand, and in the other hand, we have to hold up the new world of quantum physics. It's still physics, but it's very, very detailed and specific, and it's explaining the minutiae, I would say the underpinnings. Quantum mechanics helps explain the underpinnings of everything. Why do atoms do what they do? And we now know from quantum physics that nothing is solid. Oops, we have to hold that up alongside the Newtonian universe where everything is solid. So how do we explain both? Because both are true. What we do is we step outside those systems and we go into a witness position and say, both these sets of science are true, and it depends on what perspective you're looking at in the moment. Perspectives will change, and quantum physics calls for multiple dimensions of existence. Newtonian physics says there's 3 dimensions, and you're living in them right now. The shift that is happening right now, Brian, that is profound, happening all over the world, is people are saying, no, we live in multiple dimensions, and we're living in multiple dimensions simultaneously. And not only that, but we are getting to a point where we can choose which dimension we wish to be in according to our frequency. Change your frequency, change your dimension. So is it true? Well, I don't know what Isaac Newton would have to say about that if he were here. Is it true experientially? Yes, it's true. Can we walk through walls? experientially, no. But in other dimensions, sure, yeah. So we have to start holding room now for paradox. We've all been schooled in a way that teaches us black and white scenarios. It's this or that. And now we all have to reschool ourselves and open up to this and that. Mm-hmm. There are multiple truths and multiple realities, and we can hold them all as being true at various points in time in our lives.
Well, and then right away what comes up for me when you say, like, the people that are this or that, or this is right and this is wrong, and then to say that we have to experience multiple things at the same time, it just implodes that thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's so how so I know you're laughing because I just think about the concept of how, like when you're in like if you're at a dinner party or you're dealing with somebody who is, let's say, for lack of a better name, Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. how do you like, yeah, how does that conversation even happen? How do you engage with communicating what you just communicated, right, in the real world?
In the real world, I make discerning choices about who even wants to hear this. And I can read people's energy field well enough that I know this person is not going down that rabbit hole with me. This particular little truth bomb that I am itching to drop on you right now isn't appropriate dinner conversation. So I straddle the world of, is this the right time? Am I in the right time and place? Boy, I'd love to lay a little light on this person, but they're not able to receive it right now. And that's okay. That's not my job. Mm-hmm. I don't actually feel responsible for, I'm not an activist in that sense, Brian. I don't feel responsible for laying red pills and truth and light on everybody every chance I get, because I think that would be really annoying. I'm trying to put myself in the position of another person and hearing me preach at them when they're not even in that space and didn't ask for it. That might be really unwelcome and intrusive. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if you're asking for time with me and a session with me, well, then you're acknowledging that you're looking for some deeper answers to questions in your life. And that's perfectly appropriate for me to start widening your bandwidth right. around what you can, just bringing a bit more truth and light into a situation.
Welcome back. I'm talking with astrologer and angelic Reiki master Michelle Pillar, who is sharing a few of her favorite inspirations and books and how they impacted her personal journey. How do you stay I don't want to say ahead of the curve, because that sort of signifies some sort of time frame. But how do you stay informed?
By going with where my curiosity and interest is. So daily, I am reading things from sources that I have really come to admire and trust, and I'm reading what they're writing, and it's resonating. It's really hitting me in a strong way that says yes. I would call that research. It feels like fun because it's where my passion and curiosity naturally lies. So I tend to allow, if I come across something, I might read the byline and it's intriguing, then I allow myself to go down that rabbit hole and read more about it, and then to let it sit with me and see what it's doing with me.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally I will come across something that is so mind-blowing that my little head starts to implode, and I need to just sit with one sentence for an hour. You know what I mean? Because it's opened something in me that is wow.
Yeah.
And I can't go, I won't rush through the rest of the article because I want to just take in that one sentence.
Well, that brings me to a question I wanted to ask you, which is about books, and if you had to distill it down to somebody, depending on where they are in their journey, what would be the 3 books? But before I ask you that question, that's exactly what happened to me when I read Eckhart Tolle's, The Power of Now. Every single moment I wanted to put the book down and just think. And I love the way that he wrote that book, where he actually told you by those little symbols, you need to take a break here and digest this. And I love
Yeah.
that. I really love the fact that he understood that, okay, I'm communicating information to you, and you're going to need to have some time with this.
Yes.
Could you imagine another book doing that? Like, whether it's like there's chapters and there's paragraphs and there's that sort of break that happens in the normal kind of communication through a book. But there's not this, like, the author saying to you, no, put it down, go within.
That doesn't happen very often. Actually, you're right. But there's no doubt that the power of now swept around the globe as this massive, you must read this experience. And I had the same experience, Brian. When I read it, I needed to just be with it, just be with the information that he was sharing. And the key for me is it was not new information. It's ancient information that he was reminding us of. And we all felt it. Like, I don't know about you, but in my body was saying, yes, I understand. Oh my goodness, it's like you get me. It's like you're in my head. I feel seen when I read this book, right?
Right.
Eckhart Tolle was able to synthesize so much information that we all kind of got in little ways and put it together in one integrated book that we all went, yes, I get it. Oh, thank you. I knew it, but I didn't know it.
Yeah. So are there other books like that you would, if somebody was going to just grab 3 books off a shelf and read them, what would be the other 2 books?
I would still refer people to The Secret. I really think it, although it's been quite a long time since that book hit the markets, for people that still haven't read it, it's a powerful way of explaining to you that everything that's going on in your little head is creating your reality. So you need to start attending to what you're thinking. That book for me was profound, and it opened up a channel of receiving for me. It helped me understand that there's a thing called resonance. And if I don't resonate with that thing that I desire, I'm not going to get it.
And so, and I find that kind of an interesting combination between, you've got Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now, which is basically saying, get out of your head, don't think. And you have a book like The Secret that's coming along and telling you, be careful what you think, because whatever you're thinking, you are manifesting and it's becoming your reality.
Yeah.
So they're both very, it's almost like one is before the other, it's the secret is opening you up to the fact that you can manifest through thinking, and then the power of now is going, but don't get caught up in, being in your mind.
And that's important. And actually, the one component that is not necessarily part of the secret, the one component that's missing is you cannot just simply think your way to what you want, just as you cannot think your way from the things you no longer desire. That thought is one part of it, right? Retraining our minds to think new and empowering thoughts is a very important piece. But the deeper piece is we don't create from our heads. We're creating from our entire system. And so resonance occurs when you are also feeling the feelings that go with that thing that you want to manifest. And that's where imagination comes in. So let's see, feeling and imagination, those are two separate tools. The feeling piece is derived from using your imagination. So let's suppose I have a big dream that I want to open up a center in Toronto, much like the Omega Center that we both miss terribly, and I'm many people in Toronto miss the Omega Center. Let's say I had a dream to open something like that up in Toronto. Then I would also want to go into my imagination to see it and to bring up all of the delicious feelings that go with having that fabulous center, to see it manifest, to see it come to fruition. I cannot just think the things and see it in my mind's eye. I have to embody it. I have to feel in my body what that's like. That's where we start to resonate now, because we've got our entire system, our mind, our feeling body, working in conjunction with our physical bodies to say, yes, I'm making this happen. I'm lining up. I'm resonating with the energy of that which I desire.
So that's a nice segue into the concept of image boards.
Yes.
Or dream boards. And I know you're big into those. So, just talk about that for a bit if you can.
Well, I got this idea of using the dream boards from The Secret, for instance. And I know they work from personal experience. So the very first time that I did that, actually, it was really simple. And that was years ago. And it was very basic. And I simply started to put up pictures of houses, because I decided that I was tired of paying rent, and I was tired of not having something that could eventually be called my own. And I was ready for a house. I say I was ready for a house, Brian. I didn't have the funds. I simply meant a space had opened up inside me whereby I decided I wanted a house. So my partner and I started to put up pictures that we found, houses. That's it. Really basic. 4 months later, we purchased a house. We did not expect it to move that quickly. We really didn't. But it was this idea that we were able to visually access that which we desire. And really, pictures are symbols, just like everything. Words, numbers, all of these are symbols that can open up space within you to help match what's happening on your insides with out there in the world, the external world.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a similar story where because I think what also happens with a lot of people when they create image boards, it's always pictures of houses that are bigger and nicer and vacations that are lovelier, or boats that are bigger, whatever they're desiring, it's always something that is quite luxurious. And so we put up some image boards for some house that we wanted, and it was on our fridge for a number of years. But then all of a sudden, one day we stopped and we looked at it and we realized that the house that we had gotten and where we lived had a lot of the features that this house had, just not the sort of luxury of that level. Right down to the point where we had bought an IKEA sofa that was sort of like on sale because it was this weird color and I guess nobody wanted it and it was the end of the line. And the sofa was the exact same color as the sofa in this picture that we had on our fridge for 2 years. And it was like, oh my God, we have a sofa like that. We have a room like that. We have, these types of windows, even though it's not the exact same. And so that was a real eye opener for me on how the subtleties of these types of things can happen. I did the same thing with a sailboat. I wanted a sailboat, and the picture of the sailboat that I put up is, of course, one that I didn't get, but the one I did get has a lot of similarities to it.
Amazing. And I'm not surprised, because pictures, they really are, they're an entry point, aren't they? They give you some kind of hook for your mind to envision. And the more repeatedly you hook into that visual image, you are, of course, going to notice that, oh my gosh, we ended up with the same couch, or look, this room is configured the same as in this picture of this house on our fridge. Because how can it not be? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like that to me that's natural.
Right. You surround yourself. Well, and that's natural, because it's like what you said. It's like what's going on in your brain, what you're thinking of, what you're surrounding yourself with. It's of course going to manifest.
Yes.
And so if you're looking at somebody who's thinking a lot of negative thoughts, living in a very, cluttered, messy apartment somewhere, who's frustrated and angry all the time, you're not surprised that they've manifested a life that reflects that.
Exactly.
So, number 3, is there a third book that is a must-read for you?
Third book, I would open up into the realm of fiction. And that, now you're asking me to choose my favorite babies. I leave room for fiction because some of my most beautiful imaginings have come through reading a book that has opened up a new world or a new idea for me. And I carry that idea with me like a little flame. And I think fiction is a very valid form of, let's just say, widening your channel or widening your bandwidth, giving you pretend possibilities that actually aren't so pretend. I like the world of make-believe, Brian. It's because it's out of the world of make-believe that we make real. So I do leave that third book is open to fiction. And gosh, I mean, Emily Bronte, one of my favorite authors.
And so give me an example of what she's done for you.
Well, when I read her book, Wuthering Heights, I was, 12 years old. I was having a summer holiday in England. A family friend must have thought my face must have registered utter teenage boredom, and she handed me this book, and I fell into this world of the British moors and the world of ghosts and this angry, angry world of Heathcliff. And I wondered to myself, why is he so angry? Why is everyone so angry in this book? Why is nobody happy? But in a sense, it opened up this idea that, this ghost is pounding on the window, and so ghosts may be a thing. It opened up this idea of the love that won't let go, so this romantic notion in my early years of, there must be something like that for all of us. This kind of tempestuous love, or maybe that's what it's supposed to be, really tempestuous. And I mean, a lot of concepts that came up for reexamination when I was old enough to really experience love. Do I need tempestuous? But I think it's important for books to give us degrees of feelings. How much is too much for me? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want tempestuous, but how much is too much? To help us regulate our internal desires and thermostats. I want this, or I asked for this, and now I think this may be too much.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. I think they help regulate our internal desires. Like, would I want that for myself? That's interesting. Or this character in this book really is focused on blah, blah, blah. I wonder why, or I've never been focused on that. I wonder what that would be like. I'll read on and see this world through this character's eyes.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Michelle from Mystic Maps, who is sharing her insights on two massive astrological shifts that are changing the landscape for everyone. Something that you are very gifted at, and you probably don't even know this, but, over my journey, I've talked with all sorts of different people, from psychics to card readers to astrologers to therapists, you name it. I've dabbled in a lot of it. And you have a way of communicating astrologically the personification on planets in a way that I've never experienced with another astrologer. Meaning that you have a way of talking about whether it's Saturn or Jupiter or Mercury in a way that brings them to life, and I think makes it easy for people to get introduced to the energies that these planets manifest. And so I thought maybe you could just share a little of that without even knowing you're sharing it, which is to say, maybe tell me a little bit of what's going on. And I don't want to say right now, like, yes, it's Mercury retrograde right now, but this podcast will have a shelf life and people will, be listening to it over a period of maybe years even. So maybe just a little bit bigger picture, what's going on astrologically wise, that maybe will also give people a little bit of an essence of, what it's like to listen to Michelle talk about astrology.
Certainly. We've actually, we have experienced two massive astrological shifts that are changing the landscape and changing the astrological weather for everybody. And it doesn't matter where or when you were born, the planetary motions will anchor themselves into you in some way. Some ways are very, very personal, and other ways we feel more globally. So the more global transits that have happened recently, Chiron moved out of Pisces, where it spent the past almost decade, and into the sign of Aries. So in astrology, we call Chiron the healer. Now, you will often hear Chiron referred to as the wounded healer. It's time to upgrade Chiron now. We are all being invited, shall we say, to stop identifying with our wounds, to move out of our victimness and into our healing potential. So Chiron presents now as a cosmic healer. And in the sign of Aries, the very first sign of the zodiac, connected with identity. In Aries, we learn the expression, I am. And Chiron, moving into the sign of Aries and spending the next, again, the better part of a decade in Aries, is going to do a real number on our sense of separation from each other. Remember how all these reality shows sprang up, Brian? All these shows, things like So You Think You Can Dance, a lot of celebrity shows around singing, American Idol, X Factor, So You Think You Can Dance. These are all shows that are highlighting everybody's unique this or that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We really became all about me. Look at how I'm different from you. And there's nothing wrong with that. We are individual creatures. At the same time, we went a little bit overboard and started to identify with separation. So Chiron in Aries is going to help heal this notion that I am so separate from you that we now need to get into debate on identity politics and why you are, for instance, identifying me wrong.
Right.
We've done a lot of teaching each other on how to apply newer, more freeing labels. And at the same time, we've almost pigeonholed ourselves. There's a bit of irony. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We recently had International Women's Day as an example. And I always find this ironic, and I can't help it. I am a woman, but I roll my eyes every year on International Women's Day because I say what we're doing is we're pigeonholing women.
Right.
We're still doing it. We've set aside a day where we uplift the female vibe. Why aren't we just incorporating feminine essence into our regular lives? Like that's what we're doing. Let's stop pigeonholing, for heaven's sakes. At any rate, Chiron in Aries is coming along to rescue us from constantly separating ourselves from each other and from source. So you're going to see some shifts over the next few years around that.
So would that be an example of the whole social media selfie kind of craze that we've seen happen over the last 10 years? That would be what we are going to heal ourselves from now that Chiron's moved into Aries?
Yes. So every time, what may happen for people that are really prone to all their selfies and putting aspects of their life out there for everyone to see is they may start to question, oh, I wonder why I've never thought about why I'm doing this.
Right.
Why am I doing this? Okay, let me follow that line of questioning. I'm doing this because I want to connect with people. Okay, connect with people. I want to connect with people in a digital way, in out of my body kind of way. Is that what I still wish to do? Or is there more for me to gain by connecting with people face to face? Mm-hmm. Might that fill this thing in me that wants to connect? That's all. And there's nothing wrong with it. I love that we are able to share with each other digitally what's happening in our lives. We are teaching each other. This is why we are evolving so rapidly now. It is thanks to this ability to do it. At the same time, we don't want to stick our heads into our computers.
Right.
We want to connect with each other outdoors, in the sunshine, in the cafes, in real time, in real life, in flesh and blood. And so Chiron and Aries may have us questioning, what's my motive then? If this is about me wanting to connect, how many other ways are there to connect that I may be missing out on right now? Mm-hmm. So that's one massive shift. You've asked for another, and that is, well, I thought I heard you.
Yeah.
I thought I heard you do that.
I did.
All right. Planet Uranus has moved out of the sign of Aries and into the sign of Taurus. Taurus energy is earth energy. And whenever we're connecting with earth element, we're talking not only about our bodies, but we're talking about our planet. And we are also talking about manifestation mojo. Earth energy is manifestation. Something comes into existence, into earth. And so when we talk about manifestation, we also have to talk about economics. We're talking ecology and economy. And those are two massive things that are set to shift in ways that we can barely begin to imagine right now as Uranus begins its 8-year-long transit through Taurus. So prepare for banks to either not exist or to exist in a much smaller format. Prepare for the 1% to no longer have all of the world's resources. Prepare for the 99% to take ownership of our resources. Prepare for free energy. It exists. It has always existed. The fact that you and I pay an electricity bill is neither here nor there. The fact is that energy is free. We simply don't know how to harness it. You and I don't know how to harness it yet. But there are those that are harnessing it, and it will become available. It's always been available. It's just that, gosh, how am I going to make a buck off of you if I give you free energy? So instead, I'm going to hoodwink you. And you're going to think that electricity is a thing that you have to pay for.
Right.
But that's a little bit of red pilling. Let me not go there.
Well, I mean, I would love to go there with you in another episode because I think that, you know, whether someone agrees or disagrees with what they hear, I think that we always need to hear people who are opening our minds up to maybe an alternate reality or something that I think you've referred to me before as a timeline, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, I would love to talk about all sorts of other things with you because I could go on for forever. But I really appreciate your time. And I wanted you to maybe give yourself like a little bit of a plug. Like, how can people find you?
Oh, great. I can be found at mysticmaps.co. C-O. And there you'll find out a bit about me and a bit about what I do and how to connect with me, whether you just want more information about how I work and what a session with me might look like. And we just go from there.
Yeah. And are you on social media at all?
I am, yes. So not only is mysticmaps.co available as a website, but you'll find Mystic Maps by Michelle on Instagram. You'll find Mystic Maps on Twitter. And there is Mystic Maps Facebook page as well. So various places where you can connect with me and or other people that are connecting with me as well. And occasionally I'll put up a blog, another article on the blog at mysticmaps.co. So there are all kinds of ways of keeping in touch with me.
And as you mentioned briefly, but maybe not in detail, is people are also able to engage you, and they don't have to be in the same city, or you can do this through the internet, you can do it through phone, you can do it remotely, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really, really fun and wild when that happens. I connect with people in London, England, got a client in Japan. We always sort of have to figure out the intricacy. It's 3 a.m. for her. It's fun. I love doing this. Clients in LA. It's awesome that we can connect with each other regardless of where we are in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that.
Yeah, I think it's just part of the changes that we're seeing. The ability to connect with human beings digitally, but also in person, is rapidly changing.
And by the way, for those people that do want to connect with me in person, I divide my time between Toronto and Halifax for people that feel much more comfortable in person. So reach out to me and I'll let you know when I'm in what city, and we go from there.
Well, it's been really great chatting with you, Michelle. I appreciate your time, your insights, your wisdom, your POV, so to speak, on the world. It's fascinating to hear.
And I really, really like your podcast, Brian, and I'm looking forward to more, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you again down the road.
We sure will. I'd love to talk some more. Thanks, Michelle.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's another episode of Listen In. Thanks for being. Please subscribe, leave comments, or head on over to our website at listeninpod.com. That's listen with 2 N's, pod.com, where you'll find episode notes, links to anything that we talked about in this episode, and you can connect with us about being a guest on Listen In.